Dear students, today we'll be discussing about the subject corporate compliance. So this is the subject which we'll be discussing under the second semester for the autonomous syllabus of SJBIT for MBA department. So as you all know, so the subject itself says that it is the compliance, means the regulations, laws concerned to the corporate, means concerned to the business we'll be discussing. So very much related to the business law, the law which is pertain to the business. So that we call as corporate compliance. So what are such rules and regulations that govern the business, that govern the corporate companies? So that we will be discussing here. So in this subject, it makes the students to equip to have the glimpses of various legislations in the global environment. So as I said, so what are the legislations, what are the rules, what are the standards that need to be followed, what are the regulations, requirements, policies, and the transparency concerned, the laws that we are going to discuss. So that is very much required for the global environment with respect to the corporate companies. And also this subject will enable the students to assert their rights emerging out of business, at the same time knowing the compliance of legal requirements of business transactions. So in order to run the show, in order to run the company, so what are the mandatory the regulations a company has to know to govern the business, that we will be discussing here. And the third important objective is to learn various legal provisions under Indian Companies Act and to understand the importance of corporate social responsibility. And also the last objective, so or the one of the objective is again to make students to familiar with the CSR activities concerned with the corporate companies. So as we all know, which is a mandatory one for the organizations to follow. So here, after understanding, going through this subject, the outcomes are where the this subject will enable the students to orient towards entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial opportunities, modules in order to set up a business and to think creatively. So suppose if you want to set up a business, so you will be having an idea, so what are such the compliances or the regulations that governs the business, so that you can take a call on that. And also it makes the students to be aware about legal aspects and the ways to protect the ideas. And also it gives the insights into various acts and understand the significance of corporate governance. And also it helps the students before they start a company and to know how to protect their ideas, so that where some IPR concerned issues also we can understand. So this is about the subject, so that is corporate compliance. So under autonomous scheme, this we are going to study as 23 MBA C105. Now we shall start discussing on the subject. So this subject comprises of 5 different units. So in the first unit we will be discussing about the introduction, followed by the second unit as corporate legislations part 1, followed by the third unit corporate legislations part 2, and the fourth unit corporate legislations part 3, and the last unit as the corporate legislations part 4, means various acts and legislations, so that we will be discussing in different chapters or in different parts as part 1, 2, 3 and 4, followed by the last one, that is the environment concerned act, so that is issues. And before that, let us understand the introduction about this subject. So where here we try to understand what is the meaning, definition, then overview of this corporate compliance in India, and the sources of compliances, importance, uses, functions, essential elements of corporate compliance, and introduction to the different applicable laws under corporate legislations. Compliance and legislations both one and the same, so where we will be using both this under different context. Now, so let us start understanding the meaning of the word compliance. So, hope this sounds to be a new term or a word to a few. So, that is compliance means. So, before that we shall understand some examples. So, here a child cleaning up their room because their parent asked them to do, or a student helping other student with their homework when asked, or buying an item because a salesperson encourages you to do so, or helping a friend because they ask you for a favor. So, all these, in the different context we understand that as something, a compliance. Maybe it is not the compliance, but out of concern, out of the empathy, we opt to help, or we tend to help them. So, sometimes when it is forced, do to, like where there is no option for you, so then that becomes a compliance. So, what do you mean by compliance? So, compliance which is applicable in corporate, in the organizations, we call that as corporate compliance, which refers to the way businesses, business firms, companies and organizations ensure that they are following all the rules, regulations and policies that apply to their business in all aspects. It usually involves designing, implementing and monitoring all practices, procedures and training. So, that is, in a corporate environment, usually on daily basis we will be following many practices, procedures, process, and we will be into the training also. So, when we are into such aspects, so what are the different the rules, regulations and policies usually, so the government or autonomous bodies, they enforce us to follow that, or as per their standards or some standards set by the concerned the body or ministry or the government, we have to follow. So, such rules and regulations, so that which governs the corporate, the businesses we call as corporate compliance. So, here we have some common examples of corporate internal compliance, as the where usually in any business or in an organization we do have the code of conduct and ethics, or maybe some policies related to maybe the dress code or the ethics or the schedule time to be followed, like that, and anti-corruption and bribery policy, then confidentiality and data protection policy, conflict of interest policy, then financial controls, supplier and vendor compliance. Like, so if you are into the different domains, like maybe into services or in the manufacturing area, so looking at, so what is the obligation you have. So, say for example, you are extracting some natural resources, so you will be definitely having some obligation towards environment protection. So, to what extent you can, how you can extract, and what are the policies, you have to follow, what are the limitations you have. So, in turn, how you have to report, whom should to report, how it has to be done, like that. So, looking at the areas, the policies have been set and that we will be following. So, here we have the overview of corporate compliance in India. So, here we shall discuss few examples which as mandates we will be studying. So, here compliance becomes increasingly essential as a business, as the business expands and is exposed to various challenges and audits. Several compliance regulations exist in health, security, data privacy, then finance, environmental concerns and more, to avoid unfair or standard business operations. And also certain compliances related to regulations, that we call as regulatory compliance, which follows the legal mandates, essentially a framework of rules, regulations and practices to be adhered to, or the corporate compliance, which refers to a company following rules and regulations mandated by certain governing bodies as well as their own internal compliance structure. So, to start with, usually the first and foremost, the compliance is the Companies Act. So that we call as the Companies Act of 1956. This act is to reform and combine company related laws that which is been framed in 1956, and again related to that Foreign Trade Act introduced in 1992, which is a bill that would improve exports from India and facilitates imports into the country in order to regulate and grow international commerce. So like that here many different compliances or acts have been listed, like the Shops and Commercial Establishment Act, the Employees Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Provisions Act, and Employees State Insurance Act, the Child Labor Prohibition and Regulation Act, the Minimum Wages Act, the Payment of Wages Act, the Payment of Bonus Act, the Maternity Benefit Act, the Payment of Gratuity Act, the Industrial Disputes Act, the Apprentice Act or Apprenticeship Act, the Interstate Migrant Workmen, so that is Regulations of Employment and Conditions of Services Act. So like this many more the compliances we have today, so that they describe or they set some standard to the compliances. No? So here again to continue, the Equal Remuneration Act, then the Employment Exchange Act, Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace, that is Prevention and Prohibition and Redressal Act, the Employees Compensation Act. Like this, even before the independence, pre-independence period itself, during Industrial Revolution, many of these acts have been introduced and still we are following them. So here also we have the few list of, that is the continuation of that. So as the Professional Tax Act, the Labor Welfare Fund Act, the Contract Labor Regulation and Abolition Act, the Industrial Employment Standards Orders Act, the Factories Act, the Trade Unions Act, like that. So these are just the overview or to know about what are such the compliances today. It is there in the business. Now let us understand where all these acts, no, at least if not all, the few we will be discussing in detail to know so how they are related to the organization, to the business, like that. So whatever is been as an important has been given in the syllabus we will be discussing. Now we shall understand the importance of this corporate compliance. As we all know, you can see here in the example the importance, it is with respect to setting of rules, standards, and to follow the governance, and again to set the regulations and also to follow the regulations, to maintain transparency, and to have a list of something like do's and don'ts, or the code of conduct to be how we should be, how to the work has to be done, like that. The policies with respect to each the function, the policies will be there. So that serves as guideline or the instruction to everyone. And also suppose if we come across any issues related to that, say for example in case of sudden death or accident of an employee or a worker, again to protect the families with respect to the financial aspects. So we have Compensation Act. Again certain conditions are there, and suppose you are an employee or a worker, and again to protect the future, the safety of your life, again today we have something called as Gratuity Act or the Provident Fund Act, like that. So the Bonus Act. So all these are called as laws and requirements. So that for that reason we need to have the compliance, and also they set as the different types or forms of compliances are the legal compliance. So where in case of any the issues, we can